Welcome to this special episode of Altars and Ashes on the importance of church membership. Unfortunately, we lost the video recording of our most recent discussion, but this subject is too important to leave unpublished. So we reached back into the archives and recovered an earlier conversation featuring Austin, Robbie, and our old friend and former co-host, Brian Furlong. We haven't heard from Brother Brian for over a year, though the recording comes from a whole different podcast. The biblical truth remains just as timely. What does it mean to belong to the local church? Is former membership truly necessary? But enjoying this conversation. Church membership, though, man.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Robbie. Have you had that question? Why is there church membership?
Do I need to be a member?
Yeah, not phrased exactly that way. I think there's a lot of people who think that I can just stay home and read my Bible and listen to Christian music, or I can jump around from church to church as I see fit.
Yep.
And so, not those exact words, but the idea that do I really have to commit and have an actual specific church that I attend and I'm a member of? I think in that sense, yes, I have.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, there are many faithful Christians who wrestle with this, especially in the United States. We talked about this over lunch that, it's such an individualistic nation that we all kind of go, well, it almost feels socialist to be a part of a group,
Well, and I've had the discussion with people who've said to me, Pastor, you don't understand how close I feel to God on my fishing boat on Sunday.
On the golf course.
Golf course, walking in nature, and I don't need to be a part of a church. And so I don't think it's not, people don't only question membership, they question why is there a necessity for corporate
gathering.
Worship.
Yeah. Well, and I think that may be a separate podcast because I want to focus on the people who are generally saying I go to church, but I don't really feel like I need to join the church. I even give a tithe. Maybe I volunteer if that's welcome at the church or whatever. But why do I need to join? And so I think maybe we started out. Why don't you guys define what church membership means? At least at Grace Point, right? We can't say what everybody means by membership. But what do we mean when we say, "Are you a member of the church?"
You go ahead, man.
Well, Austin, you'd probably speak to this better than I could because you actually teach our membership class. But, we have a membership class that people go through, and I think, and you can maybe explain kind of what we go over and things like that. But you go through that, and you have committed to become a part of our church, and you are an official church member. And so I don't really think there's a deep aspect of it as far as that goes. When you're a member of something, you know when you're a member.
Yeah.
I think the question is, the process and why do we do that?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people consider themselves members of a church and they're not actually on the membership roll.
In that concept, it's I go a lot.
Yeah,
so I'm a member, right?
Or I've attended there for 3 years. That's my church.
Well,
it's my church.
We've had people over the years who came regularly. Who there's one young man years ago. He's not in our church anymore. And he was living out of wedlock, and he came to me, talked about church membership. I said, "You're welcome to come." I said, "But we cannot have you in the body."
Yeah.
I said, "If you lived with this girl out of wedlock and you were part of the body, you'd be subject to disciplining."
Yep.
And I think that is a shocker to people. It's why be a part of a body that has standards and discipline and accountability? Why do those things? And I always open up with our new membership class, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, talking about the body, how every time the Apostle Paul writes an epistle, he writes it to an ecclesia, an individual group or an individual body, which that, of course, was a legal term that was adopted by the church to represent the church's gathering individually. The churches are individual and different. We talk about the church universal. All the elect of God are a part of the church universal.
Right.
But when you read the New Testament, it's very clear that Christ intended for us to be a part of the body locally. And a big toe that is severed from the body is not alive.
Yeah. And I mean, even you were talking about 1 Corinthians 12. I was just reading in my Bible, 1 Corinthians. I think it was like maybe chapter 4 or 5. I can't remember. But he's talking about how, don't sue a member in the church. And he's like, I don't care what somebody outside the church does. That's not for us to determine. I'm talking about don't sue somebody within the church. And he's talking about that body like it's one of your people. It's a formal identity, almost family.
That verse implies that there's men in the church who are able to make judgment among the people.
Yeah.
That implies a structure of authority and accountability in each other's lives. Because why would we go to the secular magistrate to have him rule among Christian brothers and sisters when one day, that's the argument, 1 Corinthians 4, we're going to rule over everything?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Why don't you all judge? Isn't there, and Paul asks the question, isn't there somebody who's able to judge among you?
Yeah, right.
And so that implies that there's a group of people who love each other and are accountable enough to each other to make judgments among each other and accept those judgments.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I think that depending on who's listening to this, what you're saying could sound crazy because we don't like accountability to anyone but ourselves.
Yeah.
True.
Yep.
And that's kind of inbred in our culture where it's like, it doesn't really matter what anybody thinks. As long as you approve of what you're doing and you think it's right, then that makes it okay. And so the idea that people would feel like they needed to put themselves under the judgment of somebody else, I mean, that in their mind goes against the one verse that everybody knows, right?
Which is?
Judge not.
Just the first part of it? Yeah. Judge not unless you be judged. Oh, okay. Okay.
But
yeah.
I mean, I understand there's more to that.
Right.
There's
right.
context, but in their mind, there's not.
There's just judge not. Yeah.
And so I think to a lot of people, the idea that churches would do any kind of judgment or, removing somebody from the church sounds like only something that the most extreme, uncaring, unloving kind of church.
You mean like the Apostle Paul?
He was the most.
Yeah, but do people realize that that's there?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
It's like the rest of the judge not verse. They don't realize there's more.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think a lot of people think that church membership is about control, mainly, whereas what it's really about is commitment, right? Yeah. It's not about a control over a person per se. It's about people being committed to the body. However, to your point on what you said, Austin, like there is a formal structure and there has to be some authority within a body to make a decision about removing somebody if there are issues. For instance, let's say you got somebody, up there leading worship and you find out that like they're living a life that's totally antithetical to the gospel. You need to be able to remove them.
Yeah.
And if they're not a member, you don't actually have the authority
to remove them. And that's the thing is 1 Corinthians, there's a man who's sleeping with his father's wife.
Yeah. Yep.
And it doesn't say mother. A lot of times women died in childbirth back then.
Right.
So he's sleeping with his father's wife. And not only is he sleeping with his father's wife, the Bible implies that he's bragging about it. And Paul says this isn't even done among the Gentiles. In other words, people who have pagan beliefs and pagan backgrounds don't even think this is acceptable.
Right.
And that man's sin was so grievous, and he was doing something so boastful in sin. Paul instructed the church to remove him from the body and that he's not to eat with them. In fact, the context there, I think, is the Lord's Supper, because we're only a couple chapters past him laying that all out.
Yeah.
We're moving into that. So he's saying remove them from the fellowship of the church. Let me read this scripture verse when we talk about why the church exists. And so this is one, Hebrews 10, verses 23 through 25. The writer of Hebrews says this, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and to good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Mm-hmm. So the church is not so much about control as it is about commitment to Christ as a body and seeking after the sanctification of each other for the glory of the Lord we serve.
Yeah, it's less about a contract, more about a covenant, is what you're saying.
It's a covenant family.
Yeah. Are there any perks? Do you get perks with being a member?
Do you think that everyone is familiar with what you mean by the difference between a contract and a covenant?
No, good point. To me, when you say contract, it's something that you have agreed to, you have signed up to do in a legal way, but there's no emotion around
There's no
it.
relationship.
No relationship. Whereas a covenant is a promise, just like a contract. You are holding to the promise, but it's deeper because it's spiritual, right? It's a promise to fulfill the contract in a way that is honoring to God.
When I'm teaching the teens at our church, the way I always try to differentiate, because I'm like, a contract and a covenant are similar in that both sides, you have two sides making promises, but a contract is very impersonal. So I've signed up for T-Mobile as my phone company. But if I ever decide that I want to switch to a different company and I go and I cancel my subscription or membership or whatever, they're not going to say, "How could you?"
Yeah. They might try.
Yeah, they might. But it would be kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
like I thought we had, something.
Yeah, I thought we had something special. Right, yeah.
So, but when you have like a marriage, that would be the and that's one reason I would talk to teens about a covenant, is talking about marriage.
Yeah, certainly they're thinking about it, right?
And see, when I think of covenant and I'm trying to explain to kids, that's where I go. It's the family. Yeah. My relationship with my wife is not contractual. It's covenantal.
But here's the interesting thing. A lot of kids don't see that in their family.
No, they see contractual relationships.
And so I think it's a good point that you're making to show them the difference between a contract and a covenant, because their family might actually run like a covenant, like a contract, and it no longer served the purpose, so the contract was dissolved, as opposed to a covenant. And so that, I think that's a great point. I'm glad we went here. I don't even know if I have this in the notes, but
this is why I'm back by popular demand.
That's you demanded it and you're back. And now you took me off of my thought. If somebody joins the church and they become a member, are they contractually tied to that church forever?
They're covenantally contracted to Christ, and Christ died for the church.
Okay, for the church. That's
for the church. The church universal, but that's also the church individual, because you look at Revelation of Jesus Christ. The revelation of Jesus Christ talks to 7 churches of Asia Minor.
Yeah.
And so Christ is the one standing in the middle of the candlesticks. He's the one lighting the candlesticks and the one removing the candlestick.
Yeah.
And so when you are in covenantal relationship with Christ and you're in obedience to Christ, you're going to be in the churches that he's standing in the midst of. And so I would say a Christian is covenantally dutied. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah.
Called to be a part of a local body.
So it's not something you should take lightly.
No,
because you are in a covenant with those people.
Yeah. I mean, if you end up moving for one reason or another, I guess if something very serious happens in the church to where you say, I can't.
Yeah, like egregious sin or.
But I think that, if you're only going to go to a church as long as it does everything exactly the way you want it, you're never going to be in a church for more than 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you're still in the same area, you make that commitment very carefully before you do it. And once you've made it, you put yourself into it.
And I think that's where churches would do better to be more confessional and creedal too.
Yeah.
So that way people know what they're signing up for. You know what I mean?
The benefit of being confessional and on subject, off subject.
All right, yeah.
The benefit of being confessional is that our church has a confession.
Yep.
This is what we believe.
Is that your definition of like confessional, that we have a confession?
We have a confession.
That we hold to a confession.
We hold to a confession. We hold, particularly our church holds to the New Hampshire. The New Hampshire Confession of Faith, the New Hampshire Baptist, for now. With that, we can say, and the beautiful thing about the New Hampshire is it's all the close-handed items.
Right. The most
close-handed versus open-handed. So close-handed items, the virgin birth, the resurrection of the saints. And then you have open-handed items. What is your eschatology? How do you think the end times are going to come? Those things don't affect the gospel as long as you agree Christ comes back victorious.
Yeah.
So when a church is confessional, we are in fact saying, here are the absolute truths in the Bible that we are recognizing the church has always believed, and me and you can have different thoughts. We're not looking for automatons.
Yeah.
We're looking for unity. And I think some churches actually demand automatons. I mean, I kind of came up in a group that kind of demanded automatons, but I don't think historically that's how the church has operated.
No.
No.
Okay. where do we see it in Scripture? You just mentioned 1 Corinthians 12, which is talking about the body, and we've gone into conversations about that before. Where else do we see it? Obviously, in Acts, we see it, right?
Yeah.
That's the formation of the church. You mentioned Hebrews. Is there anywhere else that we see?
Well, every one of Paul's epistles are written to local churches.
Okay, right. The
And
church at Ephesus, or
church at
right,
Ephesus, the church at Corinth,
yeah.
And it's written, and a lot of Paul's letters will end with share this with this other group.
Yeah. Okay, right.
And I've always thought it was interesting that when you look at the churches, they had different battles. The church at Galatia had an entirely different battle than the church at Corinth.
Yes. Well, here's what I think. I've heard this argument before, so maybe you guys can help me out with it. But I've heard people say, "Oh, well, those are just written to a crowd of people in that area." So like they weren't really a congregation. They just happened to live in Ephesus. And so they would hear the word because Paul wrote it to all these Christians who lived in Ephesus, but they didn't really like congregate like we do.
Well, that's silly.
Okay.
I mean, it's again, going back to the book of Revelation as an example, John says to the angel at Laodicea, to the angel, and of course, angel is just a Greek word that means messenger, and he's talking about the pastors at these churches. So these are people who are pastoring a group of people, and not to mention pastors themselves, teachers, pastors, apostles were given as gifts to the church until they came in full maturity, which we're not going to come to full maturity until we get to Christ coming back in his fullness.
So Robbie, you've been preaching through Acts, or are you still preaching through Acts?
We finished.
Okay, you finished. Okay. So talk to me about, because I know just thinking about the argument about it was just a crowd in that place. I think if you walk through Acts, you see that it's more than that. It's a community. It's structured. They care for each other. They're devoted to each other.
Yeah, I mean,
there's discipline. Like, talk to us about that.
Well, especially in those early chapters when you see that first church in Jerusalem, which I think is what you're mainly getting at with that question. Yeah, where they're donating money and helping each other and all that kind of stuff. I think because people saying that church, and I know this, like you said, is a slightly different podcast, but people saying that church is not important is like a weird thing to say because, you have the book of Acts. It's all about the early church, the spread of the church. Then you have all of these epistles written to the church at Ephesus, the church in Rome. And then you have, the pastoral epistles that are written to pastors, like leadership of these churches. And so the church is obviously very important. And of course, what we're talking about here is specifically a dedication to one church.
One church, right.
And a congregation. But I think the important thing is when you see leadership being mentioned.
Okay.
And even in the book of Acts, it does some, Paul's starting a lot of new churches. But you also see him at a certain point, if I recall, he travels back through some of the churches that he started and he starts to appoint elders.
Yes, right.
And so church leadership is something that we see in the book of Acts and the epistles as well. And so if you have a leader, you have a structure.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what it would be like attending church in, first century Ephesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love history, so I always like to put things in historical context. And I know that they don't have Jerusalem, you see all these people becoming believers.
Yeah.
But they're not building a mega church.
No.
So I don't know exactly, and maybe one of you guys know the answer to this. I don't know exactly how they structured meeting with that many people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they clearly had a leadership structure.
Well,
and the reason you had a leadership structure is because there's things that need to be done and that need to be appointed that require some sort of hierarchical, structure to make decisions.
Well, if we go first century church, they start in the synagogues, they get ran out of the synagogues. Then archaeology has uncovered houses where liturgy has literally been etched into the wall. So a rich person of the church would have a big house, be like, hey, we can worship at our church. And it was such a regular practice in their house that they etch an order of service onto the wall. And they've discovered a whole bunch of those places where people met for worship.
So here's a rabbit hole, but I think it could be one that ties into this pretty easily. What about house churches? How do we feel about that? I mean,
I don't think there's anything wrong with house churches, but people who say, well, house churches are God's only design are totally missing the fact that we were building churches by 100-something BC. These would have been the men that would have been led to the Lord by some of the apostles. So
and they were building churches.
And they were
outside of their
building
house.
churches. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong building church, because we look throughout church history, it started in houses after we got kicked out of synagogues.
So the reason I'm asking, though, is, okay, you've got somebody that hasn't founded a church where they live that meets the qualifications that they feel are necessary. Are they wrong to start a house church that is very, structured?
Well, here's the thing. The Bible always calls churches to lay hands on men for the eldership, for the bishopric, and for the deacons.
Okay.
So, like, if there was a faithful Christian who was a member of Grace Point, and the church seen the calling of God in their life as a preacher and seen the gifting and laid hands on that man, and then he went and started a church, that would be biblical. But to just say I'm
just going to start one at my house because I don't like any of that.
I don't like anything here.
Okay.
I don't think that's biblical. I think churches are called to start churches, and we're not just supposed to be starting churches flippantly because I don't like the church down the street.
Right.
Me and you've talked about this on the podcast. If I moved to another town and say I wasn't a pastor and I didn't have a sending church, and I would pick the most faithful to the Bible I can find. It might be a Presbyterian church.
Yep.
It might be an old school Baptist church. The Presbyterian church might be too liberal.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is, right?
I'm going to join to that body, and I'm going to do my best to be a blessing to that body, and I'm going to know them that labor among me, because that's what the Bible's called me to do, love my pastors, back them, and strengthen the church where I'm at. I don't think, I'm not against house churches, but there is a house church movement where people are saying, there's no church that believes exactly what I teach, and therefore they're all wrong. I'm an authority unto myself. Again, people don't like outside authorities.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just going to start something.
I do worry. I mean, it obviously depends on where you're at. I'm sure there are communities, even in the United States, that do not have a good church.
Yeah.
But I am a little concerned about the way that some people define good church.
Okay. Yep.
And I think a lot of it is that they don't believe exactly how I do and would not approach things exactly as I, and I worry that there's a lot of pride in there, that I'm kind of too good for any of these churches around me. They don't have the deep level of understanding that I do. And so I would be very cautious before doing anything with that mindset.
Those same men, and I've ran into my share of them, are always like, but there's other books of the Bible other than the 66. Have you read this? And have you read that? And I'm always like, dude, you need to study your history. The church canonized the scriptures like early on.
Is this like a Gospel of Thomas type thing?
You run into those guys. They
First
think,
and Second Maccabees.
Yes. And, it's interesting because
that's the Catholic Church.
Honestly, what these men are doing.
Orthodox too.
Really? Okay.
These men are basically doing the same thing that you see in the secret societies. They have a knowledge other people don't have, therefore
sort
they
of Gnostic in a way.
Yeah, it's Gnostic. It's very Gnostic.
I think it probably boils down to, I think those are probably more rare than what you're saying, because I think there are a lot of people who visit a church, maybe even attend there for a long time, but they're not really happy with how it's run, or they don't like one of the people who preach or teach about something or whatever. And so they're like, well, I get most of what I need out of this, but I don't really want to commit to it in case I want to back out, right? It's sort of like if you go somewhere and they're like, you're trying to get cable or whatever, and they're like, contract, and it's like, nah, I'm not signing up for a contract because I might only want this for 6 months. I might only want Sling during football season, or something like that.
I've been there.
And so, so the point is, do we, in some sense, start to treat church like that? It's like, ooh, contract. Like, I got to sign this saying I'm a member. It's not like you're going to shoot me in the head if I leave, but am I a pariah?
You haven't tried to leave Grace Point.
I'm not trying. You guys will pop me. But I guess what I'm saying is, I sort of treated this episode a little bit differently. Usually I'm very heavy-handed, but I've seen a lot of people mention things that seem to have a very good reason why they are hesitant to commit. But I always think that when people are hesitant to commit, it's either a lack of clarity on the church's part or a lack of discernment and wisdom on the other person's part. Like either they're not being wise about why they are attending that church but not committing to it, or the church isn't doing a very good job of saying this is what we believe. And
and
this
people don't like the ideal of having, like you said, we're individualistic.
Yeah.
And again, Hebrews talks about obey your leaders and submit to them, Hebrews 13:17, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will give an account. So the Bible teaches that there are men who are put in positions to help teach, and they're going to give an account for your soul.
Yeah.
The Christian life was never meant to be a solo sport. It was never meant to be done alone. Spurgeon said this: a Christian is not a floating island. He's a member of a family.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I think a lot of these people, it's kind of like, why would I submit? And let's be honest, are most churches organized enough that they're actually pushing the people to become better Christians, better husbands, better wives?
Yeah.
Because most people go to churches where there's thousands of people and they can hide in the crowd, get a fluffy message that pats them on the back. The children's church has fog machines and confetti machines, and the kids are getting a full-out rock concert with little beboppers who know how to drum. And the Bible's not being clearly exposited to them, and they leave with a check mark. They've done their spiritual duty to God this week. That's not church either. Church is a group of people who know what's going on in each other's life. The Bible says you're supposed to know them that labor among you. The pastor's not supposed to be some guy out here in the ether. He's supposed to be one of the men who smells like a sheep because he's one of the sheep that's been called to bow out front. And that's what church is. So I think also there's a lot of people who won't join a church, but they'll love to hide in a big church where there's no accountability.
I think on the other side of that is that some people do fear, like, what we are a very individualistic society to our detriment, I think.
Okay.
But we also are a society that very much mistrusts institutions.
Yes.
That's an American thing.
That is.
So,
you're right.
And it has been for my whole life.
Yeah.
My understanding from looking at American history is that Watergate really started us down this thing where it seemed like
it was like eye-opening. People didn't realize all that was going on.
You had Vietnam, and then you had Watergate, and then it just seemed like one thing after another, and all of a sudden now we are as people who've kind of grown up after that.
You just wait till you hear everything that comes about a Russiagate.
but I mean, even that, like,
it's breaking every day right now, isn't it?
Like you go to, I hear things right now because I follow politics pretty closely.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I hear a story and I'm just like, I don't know what I think because I do not believe either side is talking to me right now.
That's right.
And so I don't even know what to do. But people get that way when it comes to churches as well. And they're like, do I really trust a group of men? And some of them may have even seen churches where
like abusive leadership or something like that.
The leadership was either corrupt, or maybe like overly controlling. Like you just made that throwaway reference about getting slinged during football season.
Yeah.
And, somebody showed, the pastor tries to get into your personal life to that degree where it's like, you don't need sling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
Well, I think there could be a lot of fear there that we just don't trust any kind of authority.
Yeah. We'll come back to that because I think we got to cast the vision of like how to move past that. But, Austin, you had talked about a couple weeks ago, you had a dealing with like a group of people who were in church leadership who were very controlling and like wouldn't allow any change and things like that. So what if you're at one of those churches and you find it hard, but you've been going there for a long time, but you don't like the controlling like leadership and stuff like that, who won't allow for any types of change, any reforms, anything like that. But you've been going there and you feel like you should commit, but at the same time, you don't agree with some of those things. How do you?
Okay. So this is what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit controversial. There's some churches that you can see Christ has removed the candlestick and they're just slowly dying.
Yeah.
There's a church not too far from us. The membership, there's not anybody under the age of 75. There's 20 people left. They got a 500-seat auditorium, beautiful gymnasium. They don't want a pastor to lead. They want the deacon board to stay in control.
Right.
And the same thing. So that's a hard position because, like, am I going to go be a part of a dying body?
Yeah.
Like, if I was just a church member, I would feel like I would need to be a part of a body that the Bible is being exegeted faithfully every week.
Yep.
That there's accountability, that I'm not just showing up and, I'm not just showing up and leaving without accountability in my life, without knowing the pastors. That's a hard thing to say because there is a case, which I would say, like Victory Baptist Church 16 years ago was a church that I would not want to be a member of. And now I've been pastoring it all these years, and we have Grace Point, it changed its name at some point, has not arrived.
Yeah.
We have far from arrived.
Right.
But are we healthier now than we ever have been? Yes. But that only happens if...
And healthier doesn't mean bigger.
Healthy doesn't mean bigger.
Because like you talked about, it's
In
actually
fact,
smaller.
I've said that because, like, I've desired, like all pastors, I've desired it to grow. And it hit me not that long ago. Had we grown 10 years ago, it would have been more of what we were.
Yeah.
And it was not good. If we were to grow now, it would probably be a healthier church, but we still got some toning to do, Yeah. So that is a hard... Should you be a member of a body and seek for the health of that body? Yes. But there's also a point in which you got to look. The leadership has rejected the scripture.
Yeah.
They've rejected the leading of the Holy Spirit. They've rejected having pastors and authority, particularly churches that have those deacon boards that are in control of everything.
Yep. Deacons are terrible.
They can be horrible.
The ones I know.
The ones you know.
The ones at this table.
We have good deacons at our church, but our Constitution has deacons being deacons.
Yeah.
And elders being elders.
Right.
And so if you're an elder in our church, there's a calling on your life that the church has seen and a gifting that the church knows you have.
Right.
And so you have a group of people who don't think it's their job to lead the church, but their job to follow Jesus.
Right. And serve.
And
That's
in
what
that way,
a deacon is, a servant,
Yeah.
right, of the church.
I don't know.
What about people who say it's just a man-made tradition?
They need to read their Bible.
Okay.
Here's what I have to say about that. It's not.
Okay. And next.
Well, no, I mean, it's like, if you think the church is man-made, I mean, I guess it depends. If you believe that the scriptures are inspired.
Right.
Again, look at the book of Acts,
Mm-hmm.
all about the church.
Right. So the man that made the tradition was Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
and his apostles. And the scriptures. And
right.
So that I feel like that's just one of those.
even, and I was talking to my brother about this. I just totally started talking over you. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm going to keep going though.
I forget what I was going to say now. So just keep going.
We were talking about how like even Jesus had sort of concentric circles. Like he had the 72 and then he had the 12 and then he had like the 3 and there's like a closeness. And I think of that like within a body. So like our church body should be closer than the Marion County Baptist Association and the SBC. And then there's the Church Universal, right? And so like there are almost concentric levels of closeness. And what you're committing to is, and we talked about the order of Morris, right? Loves rightly, loving the right things. You've got to love that body that you're in that tightest circle in more than the next circle and more than the next circle. And so to love them in that sense means the verb love, right? Being there, investing in that church, even when it may not feel like anything's moving. Like you might feel like, oh, I mean, I'm sure you guys have felt this way, you 1 step forward, 2 steps back sort of type thing. And you still show up because you have covenanted with that body to invest, even just like in a marriage, for better or worse, right? And so when you're covenanting with that body, you're there for better or worse to help it, unless there's some sort of sin issue that causes, you to leave or the church to kind of dissolve or something like that. So I've got this one written down too, and I think this is a pretty less common one, but some people, as I was doing a little bit of research, feel like unworthy or almost unready to join a church. Like they don't know enough, like they were recent converts and they're like, I don't really know if I agree with all of that. Like, can I just come?
Well, I would say the Great Commission to the church is to baptize them and to teach them all things whatsoever command you. The context of that teaching is those who are called to the office of those teachings.
Mhm.
So that would imply if you're saved, you're a part of the church. And throughout all of church history, particularly among Baptists, us Credo Baptist people have always been, you're baptized into the membership of the church.
Right.
It's not just you're baptized and you're some magical floating Christian off on an island.
Yeah.
You're baptized into a body and you're called to be a part of that local body.
All right. So here's another one then. And I'm just throwing out a lot of stuff today. Let's say you start reforming and you're in a body that is not at all reformed. Like, how do you try to reform that body? Do you leave and go to a body that is more along the same lines as you because you don't want to cause like dissension at that church? What do you do there?
Well, I think what you don't do is try to cause dissension, like you say.
Right.
Trying to teach things from within that the church leadership would not care for.
Right. Okay.
And so I want to be careful here about how much I say, but
yeah.
Like I've somewhat had this experience being in a church where I loved very much and still love very much
people. Mm-hmm.
But just started studying things for myself, and I was not a pastor at that.
Yeah,
and
but you were a member.
I was a member, and
right.
I was very dedicated and working and things like that, and I did work there for a long time, even as doing a lot of different stuff as some of my beliefs were changing, and I did that for a while, and I did kind of struggle with that a little bit, and all I can say is that it just as far as my personal advice, if you're in that situation, do what you can to stay, but pray to God for wisdom
on what to do,
and He will make it clear what to do.
I would be careful too, because you got to ask a few questions. Is the church Orthodox?
Okay.
If the answer is yes, the church is Orthodox, then it is a church that you can be a part of the body of. If you've started Reform, the church is much more than its Reformation theology. It's also those relationships and those accountabilities. And if your family is tightly knit into this and they're growing and the pastor is faithfully exegeting the scriptures, what I've discovered is that there are a lot of really good churches that the pastor would tell you they're not Calvinists, but they're faithful exegetors. And it's like they're preaching Calvinistic doctrine. They just don't realize
call it that.
They just don't
or they don't call it that because they don't want to offend somebody or something like that.
And my wife grew up in a church like that. That was very Reformed, but would have never said they were Reformed.
Right.
I would say there's nothing wrong with being, if your family is growing and you are getting taught, and I'll say this, if you're not spiritually leading your family already and teaching them, and you're hanging all the fruit in the church, you've already dropped the ball a little bit anyway.
Right.
So the question is this church antithetical? Is it anti to the sovereignty of God?
Yeah.
If that's the case, you probably need to get out of Dodge.
So, going back to the triaging that we did of which order of or which level of doctrine is most important, like what level do you leave a church to become a member at a different church at?
Me?
Yeah, I guess it is a little bit different for everybody.
If there's no fog machines,
then
I can't stay.
You can't stay.
I can't stay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Go ahead, Rob.
I mean, how are you doing numbering? Is number one the like the central like Orthodox?
Yes.
I can't remember.
Yes. Yeah. Orthodox in the sense that like they believe in the Trinity.
Right. Okay.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah, that's number one. Yeah.
So obviously number one. If they don't agree with the number one stuff, you got out. I would be very hesitant to leave a church on number 3.
Yes. Right? Okay. Right.
So that I feel like most people would kind of agree with that. 2 is a harder one.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, it encompasses so many different things.
Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Which is one reason why I was really hesitant to go one way or the other. And I said, pray for wisdom.
Yeah.
Because as Austin said, you have that relationship there. You have this mission that you've been on with these people for, a good amount of time. Your kids have grown up there in relationship there. And so I'd be very hesitant to leave a place, but I also don't want to say that can't ever be the right thing because I don't want to.
I would also add this. at the end of the day, the pastors of that church are going to answer to God for that church and the teachings of that church.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very brash thing to do to try to undermine the teachers by pushing your theological bend. I think there's a place for discussion with the elders, but at the end of the day, you have to respect the leadership of that church. They make an account to God for that church,
and they as the elders can decide what the boundaries are for
that content.
Yeah, and just in case somebody hasn't listened to the episode that we're talking about on the triage, that's episode 6. If you need
it's
to go
not
back
as
and
good
listen to
because I'm not in it, but
it was pretty darn good,
solid.
though. Yeah,
it's still pretty
good.
solid.
All I have to say is our numbers are much higher when you're not on, Robbie.
I would also offer this too in a situation like that. If one did feel the need to change churches, leave the right way.
Amen.
It's good.
Don't try to take as many people with you and harm that church that you're leaving.
Right.
Leave in graciousness, explain yourself to the pastor, wish them well, and leave it in a good place.
Yeah. Okay.
And with a good reputation.
Yeah.
And if you get to the new church, don't spend all your time trashing the other church.
That's right.
Focus on the new church you've come into.
Right.
Well, the Bible has a lot to say about those who cause division in the church. So there's and I've always said this to our kids in our school. You can do, if you try to do the right thing the wrong way, you've done it bad. There's no such thing of doing the right thing the wrong way. And I think a lot of these, particularly cage stagers, they get mad at the church and they try to influence as many people as they possibly can. And they want to go out with a big thud. At the end of the day, they're very immature. We're not dealing, the church, I'm not talking about a church that's not preaching the gospel. We're talking about a gospel preaching, faithful pastor who's been at it. Some of these men at it for 30 years. They're that old school. That's just what they are.
Yeah.
Leave the right way.
Yeah.
And try not to leave. If you can stay and grow and be in the midst, have a conversation with the pastor and ask those boundaries. And if those boundaries are too tight, you might have to move.
Yeah.
But respect the man that God has put there who's going to answer for that congregation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's wisdom, I think. There are things that I would definitely not leave for. For instance, we only do the Lord's Supper once a month, and I want to do it every week. I'm not leaving because of that. However, if there was an introduction that we were going to have a woman pastor, I would leave for that. Not everybody would. I would leave for that. But I think you're right, and there's wisdom that I hadn't really even thought through because I've not been in the roles that you guys have, but how you do it still matters, right? Even if that were the case, I would still want to leave without trying to trash everybody and trash the community and I'm so glad I don't go there anymore, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that's some wisdom. I think that's good.
Well, okay, you have on here, why are some hesitant? You have hurt by leadership, unclear meaning, feeling of unworthiness, lack of discipleship, which we've hit all these. But these are really the reasons. There's a lot of people who get hurt by church leaders.
Yeah.
I've met my share of people who were in a large church split, and so to this day they won't join another church. I've talked to those people, and I always use I've used this illustration for years. I always tell them there was a guy named Paul, and Paul bullied me, picked on me. Every time I was around Paul, he'd slap me in the back of the head. To this day,
you don't trust
anytime I meet somebody named Paul, I hate them automatically.
Right.
And I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
The point is, just because one leadership hurt you or one church hurt you doesn't mean you're called to go walk this Christian life alone.
Yeah.
Get in another church body, forgive, and move forward.
Yeah.
And if there's a Paul listening right now, he is talking about you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take it personally.
He does not like you, Paul.
Yeah.
What about church history? You've mentioned it a little bit, Robbie, but what about the Reformers, Puritans? They spoke about the church as a visible community where you would walk together in holiness and truth and trying to, and we talk about it for Christian boroughs. We've had this conversation too about building something. You need people to build with you. You can't really build anything alone.
Right.
And so, what do you guys think historically?
Well, okay. Back to the body, 1 Corinthians 12:27. Now, if you are the body of Christ, you are individually members of it. Paul's metaphor for body only works in the context of a real connected, accountable relationships. The early church wasn't just a spiritual movement. There was an organization, there was care, and there was covenantal community. We talk about covenantal community all the time. If you're a part of a covenant community, I had brothers growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have any siblings. Robbie was an only kid. That explains a lot of his personality.
Terrible
kids.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I had 3 brothers. You had 2?
I had 2 biological brothers and an adopted brother. So
Okay.
I grew up with all brothers. A lot of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I'll never forget when Kendall tied Mitchell by an extension cord. It made me think because he just tried to call me. Hoisted him 2 stories up a barn. We had a 2-story red barn. And by an extension cord and gets him up to the top. I was like, Mitchell, what are you doing? And Mitchell goes, oops. And let's go of the extension cord. I mean, this was me and my brother sitting in the backyard with my BB gun.
You see what you missed out on?
I across the backyard. You know, the thing is my parents were always big. You guys are brothers.
Mm-hmm.
You will love each other. You guys are going to be around long after your mother and father and I are gone,
Mm-hmm.
Lord willing. Forgive quickly. Love each other deeply. And it's funny because that was ingrained into our family. And here we are, we're all adult men and we all love each other deeply, but we still have our spats.
Yeah.
Why don't people that's what covenant community is. They get mad or hurt at leadership, but they don't come talk to leadership.
Okay.
They get mad at the church. They don't come talk to the church because we're in a generation where you can just pack your family up and go 2 blocks down the road to another church.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like you're talking about historically. That is kind of a weird thing about the United States and in our current day is there's just churches
everywhere. Mm-hmm.
You know, which makes it a little bit different. I mean, when you had the church at Ephesus, they weren't talking about separate, different church organizations and all that type of stuff.
And so when you were kicked out of the church for living out of wedlock or doing things that are egregious to the gospel as a Christian, you were put out of fellowship and you long to be back in that fellowship. Now they throw their nose up in the air and go, you know what, I'm going to go down to the church that's more loving. And they go down to Sally's Methodist Presbyterian where they have rainbow colored flags and everything's accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll go to the big mega church where nobody's going to ask who you are because there's no actual membership because everything's led by boards.
Yeah.
I'm not really helping the case of getting in a church, but I'm saying if you're getting to an actual biblical church.
I think you're making a good point in the sense that all churches are made up of humans.
Yes.
And humans do this really radical thing called sinning. And so you have sinning people who...
The bigger your church, the more sinners.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And so you're not going to find a perfect church. And I know it's a little bit of a trope people talk about all the time, but it's true. No church is perfect.
Grace Point's pretty close.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right.
Dream.
But I think there's something Calvin said, you cannot have God as your father unless you have the church as your mother. I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, it may not have in that sense been talking about a body as much as it was like the church universal. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that even like all the confessions and stuff like that talk about, you're voluntarily consenting to walk together in accountability.
But if you're in the church universal, shouldn't you be looking to be a part of the
church local
of the local the local expression of that?
Yeah.
So I think that would apply.
And I think a lot of people are looking for it. They just don't want to commit to it. You know what I mean? They want what it provides. Like people want to go to the church and they want the things that the church provides, but they're not really willing to be accountable to what they need to be accountable to.
I think because we mentioned much earlier that at Grace Point we have membership classes. And I think that's what's real important. Like before somebody commits to a church, you say, okay, here's what we believe. So you know exactly what you're getting into. Here is what we expect. And the idea that we do believe in a church authority structure and church discipline and all that kinds of stuff.
And if you're going to come and be a part of the body, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, you're not going to come and be a dead toe, a dead leg, a dead arm. You're going to come and be a part of the body. See, the thing is
and I think that's it, though. A lot of people don't want to serve.
No, they don't.
And that's part of it is.
But you know how decrepit, you have a bunch of churches that are literally zombies. because they have a ton of dead limbs.
Well, I think part of it is a mindset, and it may not. Some of it may be rebellion, but some of it may just people just don't know.
That's true.
Is that they think of church as like going to the movies. When you go to the movies, you sit down, and your job is to sit and watch and enjoy.
You're not an active participant.
Right. And you would not expect to become an active participant at the movies. Right.
That's actually a really good illustration because, like, nobody wants to go to the old movie theaters anymore. We all want to go to the one with the chairs
the
where
leather
you push the button
and
it relax back, and people treat churches the same way.
And you don't necessarily have a relationship with people that you go to the movies with either. You just go, and you might be in a group, but you're all kind of just doing your own thing, watching the same performance. But you show up as strangers.
You leave
as strangers. Yep. And the idea that church is not that may not really occur to people unless they're actually taught that and shown that by example.
There's supposed to be a church. Church should be a family, and it's funny because every healthy church makes this statement,
and unhealthy churches too,
We're a faith family. I want that to be true at Grace Point, but let's be honest. The reason it's not true most of the time is because a good hunk of people who come to church are shopping for somewhere where they like the preaching, they like the children's ministries, they like what they see, they're shopping, and they're not really looking to be a part of a body that's going to call them out into service and to rebuke them unto good works.
And I think a lot of churches are scared to tell the people that they need to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of churches that don't want to upset their people by saying things like, hey, you need to serve. Where are you going to serve? Like we talked about that earlier. Not, are you going to serve? Where are you going to serve? Having that expectation. So, you know, we don't want this to be a guilt trip if you're not a part of a local church, but it is sort of a invitation to think about it differently because it is a covenant and you should be a member somewhere serving alongside, you know, being accountable and holding other people accountable. It's not just about you. Like you might be there to hold other people accountable too who need it. And it's not a new idea of belonging to a local church. I mean, it's rooted in historic traditions.
Let me put it in a biblical illustration that's very simple. If you're a Christian, you're one of Christ's sheep. Sheep without a flock die.
Yeah.
They do not thrive.
Yeah.
Sheep are meant to be in a flock.
Okay.
And I think too many people want to be a lone wolf instead of an actual sheep, which they actually are, and they think they're going to thrive out there by themselves, but sheep do not thrive by themselves.
Yeah.
They just do not.
I really do think a lot of this is just the American culture having trouble, like the individual. I know you've said this before, but it occurred to me, because I worked in a church once that was of a different nationality. And they really asked me because they spoke the language of their country and their children spoke English.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so they asked me to come in.
Haitian?
No, it was actually Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, okay.
Yeah. And so they asked me to come in and teach their children and in English. And so I did. And I just noticed a lot of cultural differences.
Yeah.
And part of it, like, was when they got together, of course, the food was very different.
Okay, right.
And they were kind enough to get some KFC.
Oh, for you?
For me, yeah. But just the way that everybody lingered forever talking.
Yeah.
I mean, to me as an American, it felt like forever.
Yeah.
But they just, like, everyone knows each other.
You didn't sprint out the door?
They didn't. And they just hang out for such a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was always used to being in churches where it's like people, you know, half the congregation just speeds out to their car right away.
Yeah.
And then even like in some churches I was at, the church leadership, you know, at a certain point starts turning off the lights, and that's like the
cue.
That's
Get out of here.
For everybody to leave.
Yeah.
And so I think this is just something, this commitment and this of coming to not only hear the word of God, but to be around each other enough to build a relationship and not just say family, but actually start to get to know people. It is really hard for us to overcome just because of how we're naturally wired as being Americans in 2025.
Yeah. So I think that leads us, though, to the part that I wanted to get to. What can faithful Christians do if they're not a part of a church? And let's define that real quick before we say that. What does it mean to not be a part of a church? Are they a part of a church if they've been going for 4 years, but they're not members?
I think that's a good first step, but I think they need, if you've been going for 4 years, you obviously...
You're using the church, like you're getting something from the church.
You like it, right?
Right.
You feel like it's teaching the right things. You trust the leadership, so it's a good start. But take that step of talking to your pastor about, okay, what would be the process?
Well, and I'm going to say this: most pastors, if you have theological concerns, theological questions, most pastors will make the time to say, "Hey, I can meet with you. What day are you available?"
Mm-hmm.
Have those conversations with the pastors. Know the pastors, what they believe. And make sure your family can be on board with them with a good conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be honest with the pastor and have that conversation. Say, hey, I know this church is dispensationalist, but I am amillennial or whatever. Is that going to be a problem?
Well, let's be honest though. Like if a dispensationalist comes to a covenantal church and says, "Hey, I'm dispensational," is this going to be a problem? Most covenantal pastors will be like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's not going to be a problem. You can join. I ask that you stay away from this." But if I went to a dispensational church and said, "I'm a covenantal Calvinist,"
mm-hmm.
they're not going to really want you.
Oh, they're not going to.
But at least you know where you stand. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because that culture is way more closed.
Wouldn't it be good to get whichever answer you get? Wouldn't it be good to get it before you
at least know exactly where you stand, so you can be a healthy part of that body?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So find a church that teaches the Bible clearly, that honors Christ in worship, and that walks together. Right. Ask questions about membership. What does their membership mean? What is it? What things are they requiring of you? How are certain practices performed? What I heard from you, Robbie, earlier was to be prayerful and intentional about it. Maybe even don't rush it, but be intentional about it. But make sure you're asking the right questions.
Make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Not too quick of a decision, but you do have to make one of it.
Right. Okay. Talk to the pastor or the elders, right? Let them know where you're at. Find out where they're at. A healthy church should walk with you through that, not necessarily pressure you, right? But it should be one of those things that they're letting you know it's an intention and it's something that they're looking for, but it shouldn't be like a car sales pitch, like that might be a red sign or a red tape or something. But
amen.
What do you guys think? Anything else that we didn't hit on?
I think we've completely solved it. I think we've answered every possible question.
Every possible question.
So every listener should be lining up to join a church after we brought Robbie on.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because he's, what would you say you were, brought back by popular demand?
Yeah.
Well, that was the conversation, and it was a good one. Church membership is not merely having your name on a list. It's a public commitment to a particular body of believers. To worship together, submit to biblical shepherding, bear one another's burdens, pursue faithfulness side by side with your brothers and sisters. The Christian life was never meant to be lived alone. Christ saves his people into a body, and every believer needs a local church where he can be known, loved, corrected, equipped, and sent. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I hope it's been an encouragement to you. Again, I want to thank you for listening to this special episode of Altar and Ashes. We will be back on our normal broadcast as we are working on Kingdom Dominion. I'll see you all next week.